All right, so we are done with the opening paragraph and or the intro, and then the first two paragraphs. We're going to tweak this. After the semicolon, we don't need the on the other hand, because the semicolon sort of says that. But semicolon is an interesting piece of punctuation. It can say a lot. But essentially it connects two sentences, complete sentences, and does so, or oftentimes it's mostly used in that way, or I mostly use it in that way. It can be used in terms of lists as well, but I use it oftentimes connecting two complete sentences. So I didn't realize that I almost blew my cover by turning in the finished test early with literally 20 or so minutes left to spare. Chris always was among the last students to turn in his finished math exams. And I think, let's see, am I saying exams? Well, test, exams, yeah, it's okay. So I was risking getting caught. Risking getting caught. I risked getting caught. I was risking being caught. I was risking getting caught. It's generally not. It's generally better to not have the ing words twice. I was risking getting caught. I mean, so I risk getting caught by being such. So I risk getting caught by being such a dedicated and focused test taker that day. I actually want to change because being and getting. So in programming, they call this when you're editing. So I risked being caught. So I risked being caught because refactoring. We call it refactoring. So I risked being caught because I was such a dedicated and focused test taker that day. I don't know. I think by being sounds better. And this is another reason why I highly recommend that you just read a lot, especially when you're young in school, elementary school, middle school, high school. If you end up going to college, for sure college. You know, any college, grad school, PhD, just read, especially when you're in that structured environment. I know some people might disagree. There's thoughts on everything, so this is very subjective. But my subjective opinion is that reading is helpful because then when you're saying this stuff out loud, you just know, you feel like you know what sounds better, right? You're like, you know what, this sounds better, this looks better. I'm not like a journalist, so it's not like I'm writing articles all the time, and or I'm not, like an author or an editor for my living. I mean, those guys, if that guy put on a class or that woman put on a class, I mean, they probably wouldn't make hardly any mistakes, if any. Me, I tutor and I remember a lot of stuff, but I'm definitely, a lot of it is by ear and sight, just because I've read a lot over my years, but not because I do this all day long. So I think that yeah, but just so I risk being caught by being such a dedicated and focused test taker that day. That's so. I can change this to hence. It's a risk being caught. You know what? Let's do a little bit of editing right now. We'll start from the top and work our way down. I still haven't decided what to put here. And I'm thinking that we might put something that we can connect to in the essay, in the body of the essay. So maybe there will be somewhere where we go where we say a set of blank, and then maybe or maybe in the conclusion, maybe we'll see a way to connect into a conclusion. I mean, this could be a set of steak knives, but then even knives and births, it's kind of creepy. I don't know. There's just that connection. So we probably don't want to use anything sharp. You want to use something that's sort of that's not gonna, evoke any disgusting or confusing. Yeah, I mean, you don't want to pick something that's baffling, especially early on in the essay. So that's why I'm just waiting, because maybe we'll connect this. We'll throughout the course of writing the essay, we'll find something that we can place there, but not yet. There was one set in every 250 human births. No, not a set of blank, but rather a set of heads, a set of bodies, or, to be more exact, a set of identical twins. And I always use two spaces. Some disagree. I just think for readability, teachers would prefer that. But it's up to you. Some people completely disagree and think one is fine. As with many twins, you were born premature, as opposed to prematurely, because prematurely is more grammatically correct. But born premature babies, the word premature is very common just out there when you're talking about twins in the medical world and all that. So I do believe that most teachers wouldn't mark this down. And some might appreciate that, that it's sort of in the lingo, the jargon of the medical, medical dialogue, the medical talk, etc. So, but, you never know. I mean, some teachers, they have to mark something wrong. Even if you try to be perfect, they're going to mark some stuff wrong. That doesn't mean that your grade's going to be lowered. Some teachers have a policy that, they're always going to mark something wrong, even if you write perfectly. Other teachers, it depends. It depends on, what school it is. It depends on what class it is, it depends on who the teacher is, and, your perception, their perception of you in that class might have an effect. But that's a different video. But for this one, yeah, let's go through some editing. But yeah, so I'm going to take a risk here and say premature, because we could say prematurely. We were born prematurely. But I don't like it as much, just personally, as the writer. So I think it's better with that. So I'm going to take that risk that the teacher's going to say, oh, this is grammatically incorrect. Although we were supposed to be born in early summer, we actually popped up 5 minutes apart in mid-April. We were tiny. So I don't use two spaces between after the semicolon, but after a period I do. A full stop. Also, says my twin brother Chris was 2 pounds. Oh yeah, forgot. So here, we didn't introduce us as twins. So, and I was actually born an identical twin myself. Actually, that's a tricky one, because myself is one person and I'm talking about twins. But I like it. I think myself, saying that myself along with all these other twins, and I was actually born an identical twin myself, along with the firstborn twin. So that could be confusing, because you're like firstborn, otherborn, twins of the other twins. So you want to like pack in the meanings, but if it raises questions and it's vague, or it might raise a bunch of questions, then you want to delete it, and you want to put that detail. If you think it's a salient detail, you want to put that detail in later. So, and then also, and that early in the sentence, that early in in the essay and to start the sentence, I think it's a little lazy. So let's see if we can just say, I'm not a set of, I was actually born identical to myself. You know what? I'm just going to go directly in at it. My older brother, Chris, and I were born 5 minutes apart, which lets them know you're probably twins. By stating that 5 minutes apart, we're probably twins. So let's see if this works. Let's see if this is creative and interesting and helpful for the reader to understand and to follow it. My older brother Chris and I were born 5 minutes apart. And we looked and I was told and we looked pretty, we looked like spitting images of one another upon you could say childbirth, upon birth, upon being born. We look like spitting images of one another, right? Which tells them we're identical, but doesn't repeat ourselves, directly with the same language upon our births. Yeah, this is fine. Upon our births. So once in a while, you might repeat something that you'd rather not. But if there's nothing else better, that you can think of, can think on, or can think about and come back to, then you can use this. So my older brother Chris and I were born 5 minutes apart, and we look like spitting images of one another upon our births. So we're sort of telling them that we're identical twins. As with many twins, we were born premature. Now, we weren't told that we're identical, but it's pretty certain that we're identical because we're saying there's one in every 250 births, a set of identical twins. And then we say my older brother Chris and I were born 5 minutes apart, and we look like spitting images of one another upon our births. So we could mention this as with many identical twins who were born premature, because it sort of repeats it, but it makes it very clear, like for sure we're identical. We're not fraternal. They were supposed to be born early summer. We actually popped up 5 minutes apart in mid-April. Okay, now we mentioned 5 minutes apart. Popped out. Born premature. It's a long sentence. Let's delete this. Let's say 2 months early to be exact. Oh, we just said exact. Let's just say a few months. You were born a few months premature. Because it's not really super important exactly, how many months, 3 months, 6, 3 months, 2 months. A few months implies that, like, yeah, that's early enough. I mean, it's only 9 months, so a few months would be like, wow. That's risky, right? So that's fine. And then also we shortened it, so that's not a bad thing. It's usually not a bad thing. As with many identical twins, we were born a few months premature. We were tiny. I was 3 pounds 2 ounces, and my twin brother Chris was 2 pounds 11 ounces. The only thing is, it seems like I'm sort of minimizing the risks. The risk that we went through. However, at least it's not. I'm not like cloying. I'm not like trying to pull at the reader's heartstrings. We were born. Let's change this to weeks. By many weeks. We were born premature by many weeks. And editing is tough. Editing is really tough. It really requires a lot of patience. And this is one thing that I always encourage is to proofreading and put it down. This is why you want to do stuff early. Do your assignment early, because then you can put it down, go play, go do something else, go sleep. Then the next day, go look at it with fresh eyes, and then if you can do that again. We were born premature by many weeks, by a factor of weeks. We were born a few months premature is fine. I think it might come off as minimizing it, but when I step back and read it, it doesn't look that, it doesn't look like I'm minimizing it that much. As with many identical twins, we were born a few months premature. We were tiny. I was 3 pounds 2 ounces. My twin brother, Chris. Okay, so now I don't have to say Chris because we already introduced him earlier. My older brother, Chris. So he's the older brother. He's the older twin. So I didn't say my older twin, Chris, because I sort of want the reader to make that leap, right? I just mentioned identical twins. So these are all editorial considerations, and you want to think about how you're revealing the information to the audience, how you're sort of spoon feeding them the information. If you said my older twin Chris, that's really literal. My older twin Chris, but then you're thinking, is that do you have another brother who's also a twin? Are you not a twin? Are you a twin? It can be confusing, right? So you want to, when you reveal this information, and when you introduce the reader to this information, you want to be very careful about how you phrase things. My older brother, and this is where editing comes into play, or refactoring if we were in programming. So my older brother Chris and I were born 5 minutes apart. We looked like spitting images of one another upon our births. Yes, identical. And true to form. So true to form. But then we have these offsetting hyphens there, and then we have commas. We could delete this. 5 minutes apart. Let's just say this detail in Kalamazoo, Michigan. As with many identical twins. Okay, cool. So that makes it a little shorter. As with many identical twins, 45 minutes premature. So you want to keep sort of the details in mind, and then say, okay, and since this is personal, we have a lot more details. It's actually a lot harder, I think, in some ways, to write personal narrative essays, because there's so many details that you can include that you're like, okay, let me put this in, let me leave this out. If I say my older brother Chris and I were born 5 minutes apart, period, that just doesn't seem like enough details to make that sentence interesting. And again, it's a matter of feel. It's like you just feel it. And as many that were a few months premature, we're tiny, and Chris. So now I refer to him as Chris. And Chris was 2 pounds 11 ounces. And I'm going to put a mere, because since he's older, I would normally mention him first and then me, right? But then if I say I was small, we were tiny, and Chris was a mere. So it's implying that, look, if you thought 3 pounds 2 ounces was mere, this is mere. And as you might imagine, we were placed in incubators for weeks while they took care of us. As my mom still says to this day, you guys had a 50 chance. And now those odds. And then any chance. I think that's, we'll put that. The commas offsetting. and a positive, I believe. Well, and a positive is basically repeating the same noun. So Bob, comma, a world-renowned figure skater, comma, walked across the street. Period. That's in a positive. So these offsetting commas, I believe, create this a positive here, but it's dialogue, so I don't think this is necessarily a positive. But luckily, we ended up okay and made it out of the hospital after a brief stay. An old poor folds of us together, just like possibly brights where everyone gets. Essentially, none of our heads would figure. Our heads, yep. Here's where we put the quotes. Would figure prominently in a few of our most memorable, most embarrassing, sometimes embarrassing events. And then we connect, and the writer connects events from the previous sentence to the next one. Again, this is a little bit colloquial, like conversational, like day-to-day talk, but it still shows the threads. It is these events that partially help shape us to who we are today, shape us to who we are today, shape us into who we are today, shape us to who we are today, to be who we are today, shape us to be who we are today, shape us to be who we are today. Yeah, I like that. Even though it's a lot of short words, I think it makes a little bit more sense to be who we are today. And that have helped remind us that we must always use our heads in life. Indeed, taking a few artists and even in perhaps, especially if one is situated to be born in that one. Okay, so let's around 12 years old. Let's talk about the moon with condo. I feel a sense of levity. So no and. Nevertheless, looking back on that incident now, I feel a sense of levity. Levity. I could say mirth. I could say joy. I could say laughter. I think levity makes sense because it's a counterpoint to dazed and in pain. I feel like it's like the proper word to use. Just looks right. If he feels right. Banging our heads after running full speed to one another for hundreds of feet was a clear reminder that we were identical twins, both sharing an egg in the womb, coming out with very similar body structures, heights, dimensional weights, etc. Just ruminate. So I said that earlier that we were identical twins. Let's look and see. Here, okay, cool. So here's this says, as many identical twins, we were born. So I didn't say my twin brother and I, Chris, were born identical, or my brother and I, Chris, were born as identical twins. Wow. I'm trying to introduce this information in sort of a creative way, and that's really what is what's very important with regards to writing essays is and it's good to cut your teeth on narrative essays because it's trickier. You don't have source material to draw from. You just have your memories. It's like, okay, how can I weave these memories in and weave these details in an interesting way? And all these are all considerations that you want to make. So let's see. So we both elected never again to try to take the soccer ball out again. Okay, so I said again and again. As we both elected to so let's even now as we both instead afterwards decided which one of us take the ball out first. So this is not a good sentence. It's below average. So we gotta fix this. Banging our heads. Was it identical twins? Um, so this memory resonates even now. And then saying we decided. Well, it clearly resonates, so I don't have to repeat myself. So I don't even need this. So here's a question: do I want to say like we later decided not to ever put the soccer ball in the middle because we run the same speed and we bang our heads again? Yeah, it might be helpful because then we have our problem solved and our heads healed. Um, but let's delete this memory resonates because we know it resonates because I'm talking about it. So uh, um, uh, we both we both let's just say afterwards. So after that event, we each decided or both decided. We could say both because like collectively having a dialogue, we both decided um, that for future soccer games, for future one-on-one soccer games, one of us would take the ball out first, and the other one would take the ball out at halftime. No, it's not at halftime. It's actually in the second half. Take the ball out to launch the second half. To launch the second half. Let's look at how it sounds. Look at how it reads, or listen to how it sounds. Look at how it reads. And the other one of us would take the ball out first, and the other, right? Because there's only two of us. I'm going to use the fewest number of words. The other would take the ball out to launch the second half. I think launch is a little bit much. The other would take the ball out after halftime, which is kind of funny because when you're a kid, you structure stuff and you're like, oh yeah, it's halftime, first quarter, like you're a kid, so it sort of brings out that kid environment, like we're using the same language as if we were playing in the MLB, like so it's without saying all that stuff, we're sort of planting the visual seeds in the reader's mind that's how our sort of world worked. We called it halftime. Afterwards, we both decided that for future one-on-one soccer games, one of us would take the ball out first and the other would take the ball out after halftime. Problem solved and our heads eventually healed. Okay, I think this works. While heads physically healed after an unfortunate childhood incident, where our heads physically healed, and I wouldn't call it unfortunate. I mean, it was unfortunate, but it wasn't like our dog died. I mean, we just banged heads. I mean, I guess it could have been more unfortunate. So after the head banging, so we can make something funny, right? The head slamming incident. We could say head slamming event, but that's not really an event. I guess if you're going to say head slamming, we'll say incident. And usually, yeah, so while the head's physically healed quickly after the head slamming incident, I guess it was our incident, our head slamming incident. I can't say for our heads later on in high school with regards to some of our collective decision-making skills. For example, somehow Christian had planned for me to take one of his, I think it was pre-calc. Well, I want to show that it was a pretty rigorous class. I think it was pre-calc. I'm not positive. Pre-calc test in 10th grade. I went to his class and sat down in his seat and commenced taking his midterm. As a matter of fact, it might have been 11th grade. I think it was 11th grade. I was at a Spanish teacher for Spanish 1, and I think I had her for Spanish 3. I'm not sure if I had her for Spanish 2. This is what happens when you get old, folks. You just forget stuff. So never get old. I'm not even that old. But yeah, so I remember a lot of stuff, but some things they're hazy. Okay, so I went into his class and sat down in his seat and commenced taking his. I don't think it was a midterm. I'm almost positive it was a midterm. Um, and commenced work. Commenced working. Commenced my work. I guess it became my work as I was doing it, and commenced. I could also make fun of myself and feel very ill. My duplicity, right? My pretending to be somebody else. Um, I could say duplicitous scheme or duplicitous scam or whatever, but then that's like really pouring it on thick. So duplicity, is sort of, saying that, yeah, I know I was doing wrong. I was pretending to be somebody else, but it's not like pouring it on like super thick. But it's still like winking at myself and winking at the reader, saying, hey, I know I was doing wrong. This was a bad thing. Um, you might assume correctly that of our fellow classmates, um, not all. So you could say, because you want to just minimize the words, the fewest number of words to really get the message across, that our fellow classmates in the class, is there any way to say, yeah, that our fellow classmates, because it sort of implies that a lot of us were friends, which is true. We had a pretty solid high school, and our class, a lot of us were friends. So it sort of brings them, yeah, it lets the reader know that we got along, it sort of implies that we get along. My brother asked me because my brother asked me because he knows which sharper. Chris's classmates, honest, B minus. I don't know. I'm not sure. I mean, if I put B minus or C plus, then it might be looks like I'm trying to bash my brother. I think, my brother probably would have gotten a B. I don't know if he studied though. I don't remember. Maybe he didn't study at all, and I don't remember. But I guess I could put B/C. But I mean, Chris wasn't really a C student either. So I mean, he got A's and B's. So this is fine. Chris Galactus could barely continue to giggle, so although his teacher was completely oblivious to the old twin switcheroo that we were playing that class period. Okay, so that class period, do we need that? Is it necessary? I guess it's being clear, but I'm also saying that it's just this test. It was me taking one of his pre-calc tests in 11th grade. So it implies that like it's just one test, it's just one class. So we'll omit that. I didn't realize I was going to cover by turning in the finished test early with later 20 sets. Let's erase literally. Usually you don't need it anyways. With 20 or so minutes left to spare. Chris always was among the last students to turn in his finished math exams. I was later told. Hence, I risk being caught by being such a. Do I need to say the math teacher? I could say his teacher didn't catch on, and I was minutes away from freedom. I merely sat at my desk, at my brother's desk, waiting for the bell to ring. I merely sat at the desk. No, I'm again reiterating my brother's desk. This is my brother's desk. I'm doing wrong. I'm sitting where he's supposed to be sitting. So yeah, that's some of the edit. I like to edit from time to time, especially if I feel like maybe I might have a block in terms of the next paragraph. So I'll just go back and do some edits. It gets you in a different mindset. It gets different muscles working in your brain, and then maybe when you come back next, you'd be able to write the next paragraphs, etc. So I'll see you guys at the next video.